I worked double shifts to fund my husband's business. Coming home early, I heard him tell my sister, she's pathetic. Thinks buying me tools makes me love her. I'm just glad she's working tonight. My sister giggled, don't worry, Mark. Once her inheritance hits your account, we can finally leave. I froze. Then I silently recorded everything. Yesterday, they asked why the bank account was empty. Hello everyone. Thank you for being here with me today. Before I begin my story, I'd love to know which city you're joining us from. Please feel free to share in the comments. Now, let me take you into this story. The wind in Chicago doesn't just blow, it bites. It cuts right through your coat and settles in your bones, reminding you that nature doesn't care if you're tired. And God, I was tired. I had just finished a double shift at Mercy Hospital, 16 hours on my feet, dealing with trauma cases, screaming patients, and the endless beeping of heart monitors. My ankles were swollen to the size of grapefruits, and I smelled like antiseptic and stale coffee. But as I navigated my Toyota Camry through the blinding snowstorm, my heart felt light. Lighter than it had been in months. Today was our 20th anniversary. 2 decades. In the passenger seat sat a small, velvet-wrapped box. Inside was a Rolex Submariner. It had cost me my entire end-of-year bonus plus 6 months of secret savings, eating peanut butter sandwiches instead of buying lunch at the cafeteria. Mark had been eyeing it for years. He always said a man needed a good watch to be taken seriously by investors. I wanted him to feel successful, even if his tech startup hadn't made a dime in 3 years. I wanted to show him that I believed in him, even when the bank statement said I shouldn't. I pulled into the driveway, the tires crunching heavily on the fresh snow. The house was glowing warm and yellow against the gray storm. It was the only thing I had left of my grandmother, this house. It was fully paid off, a sanctuary in a world of debt. That's when I saw it. A red Mazda Miata parked haphazardly in the driveway, blocking the garage. Jessica. My younger sister. I frowned, checking the dashboard clock. It was 4:30 p.m. I wasn't supposed to be home until midnight. I had traded shifts with a rookie nurse specifically to surprise Mark with a steak dinner and the watch. Why was Jessica here? She lived 40 minutes away in the city, and she usually avoided the suburbs unless she needed money. Maybe she came to help him set up a surprise for me? A flicker of hope ignited in my chest. That would be so like Mark, right? Maybe I had misjudged him lately. Maybe his distant behavior was just stress, and he had invited my sister over to help decorate. I grabbed the velvet box in my bag, shielding my face from the biting wind as I hurried to the front door. I went to unlock it, but it was already unlatched. Careless. I stepped into the foyer, shaking the snow off my coat. The heat of the house hit me instantly, smelling of roasted garlic and expensive cologne. My cologne. The one I bought Mark for Christmas that he said was too fancy for daily wear. I was about to call out, surprise, when a laugh stopped me cold. It was a high, tinkling laugh. The kind that sounds like breaking glass. Jessica. They were in the living room. The layout of my grandmother's house meant the foyer connected to the living room via a short hallway, but the acoustics were perfect. I could hear a pin drop. She looks so haggard lately, Jess. Like a zombie, Mark's voice drifted out, clear and deep. Honestly, touching her feels like charity work at this point. I froze. My hand was still on the zipper of my coat. The cold from outside seemed to seep back into my skin, freezing my blood. Oh, stop it, Jessica giggled again. There was the clink of wine glasses. She pays the bills, Mark. Be nice to the golden goose. Cash cow is more like it, Mark scoffed. I heard the rustle of fabric. God, you smell good. Sarah always smells like rubbing alcohol and desperation. You're the only one who makes me feel like a man, babe. My world tilted on its axis. I felt bile rise in my throat. I wanted to scream, to run in there and throw the Rolex at his head. But 20 years of being a nurse, of staying calm when blood is spurting and monitors are flatlining, took over. My breathing shallowed. I didn't move. I needed to hear this. I needed to know exactly how deep the knife went. Just a little longer, honey, Jessica cooed. Her voice dropped to a sultry whisper, but I heard every word. Once she signs that home equity loan for your expansion, we'll have enough. 200,000, right? 250, if the appraisal comes in high, Mark replied, his voice thick with lust. I told her it's for servers and hiring developers. She doesn't know a server from a toaster. She'll sign. She always does what I tell her. Perfect, Jessica said. Then we can finally ditch this frozen hellhole and fly to Miami. I already looked at that condo on the beach. You, me, and the ocean. No more nagging, sister, no more bills. No more pretending to love a woman I haven't been attracted to in a decade, Mark added brutally. Let's celebrate before the old hag gets home. She's working a double, right? We have ours. Old hag. I looked at my reflection in the hallway mirror. My eyes were sunken, dark circles carved under them from exhaustion. My hair was pulled back in a messy bun. I looked old. I looked used. And they were laughing about it. My own sister. My own husband. The velvet box in my hand felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. I had worked double shifts, missed holidays, and destroyed my body to fund his dreams, to pay off Jessica's credit card debts, to keep this family afloat. And they were planning to steal my grandmother's house, my inheritance, and run away to Miami. I gripped the doorknob. The urge to burst in was overwhelming. But then I heard the sound of a zipper, and a moan that I recognized all too well. If I went in there now, I would just be the hysterical wife. Mark would lie. Jessica would cry and say I was misunderstanding. They would gaslight me, just like they always did. And I would have no proof. I slowly, silently, pulled the door handle. I backed out into the storm. As the wind howled around me, tears finally hot on my cheeks, I realized one thing. The Sarah who walked into that house, the loving wife, the supportive sister, had died in that hallway. Whoever I was now, I was going to make sure they regretted the day they called me a cash cow. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely get the key into the ignition. The engine of my old Camry sputtered to life, a stark contrast to the sleek, silent hum of the Miata blocking the driveway. I wanted to ram my car into it. I wanted to smash the bumper, shatter the taillights, scream until my throat bled. But I didn't. I backed out of the driveway, turning off my headlights until I was down the street, hidden by the curtain of falling snow. I drove on autopilot, the wipers slapping frantically against the windshield, fighting a losing battle against the blizzard. I couldn't go back to the hospital, my shift was over, and I was in no state to save lives. I couldn't go to my parents' house, God knows whose side they would take. They had spent their entire lives making excuses for Jessica. I pulled into the parking lot of the Starlight Motel, a rundown place off the interstate that charged by the hour. It was the kind of place you went to hide, or to sin. Fitting, I suppose. I checked in under my maiden name, paying cash. The room smelled of stale cigarettes and lemon cleaner, a desperate attempt to mask decades of bad decisions. I locked the door, threw the deadbolt, and slid the chain across. Only then did I let go. I slid down the wall, clutching the velvet box to my chest, and the panic attack hit me like a freight train. My chest constricted. I couldn't breathe. It felt like an elephant was sitting on my lungs. Gasping for air, I clawed at my scarf, ripping it off. Inhale. Exhale. You are not dying. You are just broken. Why? The question bounced around my skull. Why Jessica? A memory surfaced, unbidden. I was 10 years old. Jessica was 5. I was sitting at the kitchen table, doing my homework, when a crash echoed from the living room. I ran in to find my mother's favorite porcelain vase, an antique from Japan, shattered on the floor. Jessica was standing over it, holding a baseball bat she wasn't supposed to touch. When my mother ran in, Jessica immediately burst into tears, pointing a chubby finger at me. "Sarah pushed me. Sarah did it." My mother didn't even ask. She grabbed my arm, her nails digging into my skin. "Why can't you be careful? Why are you always so clumsy?" "But Mom," I had cried, "I was in the kitchen." "Don't lie to me, Sarah. Your sister is little. She doesn't know better. You are the older one. You are responsible." I took the beating. I cleaned up the shards. And later that night, I saw Jessica smirking at me from her bed, clutching her teddy bear. She learned early that tears were a weapon, and I was the shield she could hide behind. I looked down at the Rolex box in my hand. I stood up, walked to the trash can by the wobbly desk, and hovered the box over it. 3 months of double shifts. 3 months of missed lunches. No. I wouldn't throw it away. That was my money. I shoved the box deep into my bag. Then I pulled out my phone. I had turned it off the moment I left the driveway, terrified Mark would call and I would scream at him. I turned it back on. 5 missed calls from Mark. 3 texts. "Mark, honey, the snow is getting bad. Are you staying at the hospital tonight?" "Mark, just worried about you. Love you." "Mark, babe?" I read the words "love you" and felt physically sick. He was checking to make sure the coast was clear. He wanted to know if he had time to sleep with my sister in my bed, on my sheets, under the roof I paid for. I walked into the bathroom and splashed cold water on my face. The mirror showed a woman I barely recognized. The zombie he had called me. Maybe he was right. I had been sleepwalking through my life, thinking that if I just worked harder, if I just loved more, if I just gave more, eventually, it would be enough. But you can't fill a bucket with a hole in the bottom. And Mark and Jessica were black holes. I sat on the edge of the lumpy mattress, the cheap polyester bedspread scratching my hands. I needed a plan. I couldn't just divorce him. If I filed for divorce now, he would fight me for the house. Illinois is an equitable distribution state. He would claim half of everything, even though he hadn't contributed a dime in years. He would drag it out. He would use my inheritance to pay for his lawyers. And Jessica, she wanted my life. She wanted my house, my husband, my stability. She wanted to skin me alive and wear my life like a coat. I closed my eyes, and the nurse in me took over. The part of me that assessed triage. Patient is critical. Bleeding out. Stop the bleeding first. Then, operate. I needed to know the extent of the damage. I needed to know exactly how much they had stolen before I let them know I was awake. I opened my laptop, connected to the motel's spotty Wi-Fi, and logged into our joint bank account. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I was terrified of what I would find, but ignorance was no longer a luxury I could afford. The next morning, I did something I hadn't done in 10 years. I called the hospital staffing coordinator and lied. "I have a migraine," I said, my voice naturally raspy from a night of crying. "I can't come in." "Oh, Sarah, really? We're short-staffed with the storm." Brenda, the coordinator, sounded stressed. "I'm sorry, Brenda. I can't even open my eyes," I said firmly and hung up. The guilt usually would have eaten me alive. Today? I didn't feel a thing. My priorities had shifted tectonically overnight. I relocated to a coffee shop 3 towns over, far enough that I wouldn't run into anyone I knew, generic enough to be invisible. I bought a black coffee, opened my laptop, and began the autopsy of my marriage. I started with the joint checking account. It was the operating account for the household, where my paycheck was deposited every 2 weeks. I knew the balance was usually low because bills were high, but looking at the transaction history now, with the veil lifted, was like reading a crime scene report. There were the usual suspects: mortgage, electric, water. But then there were the business expenses. Amazon, $450. Best Buy, $1,200. Delta Airlines, $600. I clicked on the details. Mark had told me the Best Buy charge was for a new server rack. I cross-referenced the date. That was 2 days before Jessica's birthday. I logged into his Amazon account. I knew the password because I paid for Prime. I went to order history. It wasn't a server rack. It was a Dyson Airwrap hairstyler. Pink. My hand flew to my mouth. I had been using a $10 hairdryer from CVS that sparked every time I plugged it in. Jessica had posted a photo of her new toy on Instagram that week, captioning it #blessed #selfcare. I kept digging. The Delta flight? A business trip to a tech conference in Austin last month. I checked the itinerary. 2 tickets. One for Mark Evans. One for Jessica Miller. He took her to Austin. While I was pulling 3 night shifts in a row to cover the mortgage, they were eating brisket and listening to live music in Texas. I felt a cold, hard rage solidifying in my stomach. It was better than the sadness. Sadness paralyzes you. Rage? Rage gives you fuel. Then I went to the big one. Our retirement accounts. I had a 401k through the hospital that I had been contributing to since I was 25. But we also had a joint investment account that we were supposed to be building for our future. Mark managed it because he said he understood the market better than I did. I logged in. Balance, $432.18. I blinked. I refreshed the page. Balance, $432.18. There should have been over $60,000 in there. I clicked on withdrawal history. It was a bloodbath. Withdrawals of $5,000, $2,000, $10,000 over the last 18 months. Transfers to an account I didn't recognize. Transfers to Crypto.com. Transfers to DraftKings. Gambling. He wasn't just spending it on Jessica. He was gambling it away. My retirement. My safety net. Gone. Then I remembered what I heard last night. Once she signs that home equity loan. $200,000. They had drained the liquid cash. Now they were coming for the equity. They wanted to mortgage the house, my grandmother's house, extract the cash, and vanish, leaving me with a mountain of debt and a foreclosure notice. I checked my credit report. My score was still excellent, 810. That was the only reason they needed me. They needed my signature. Mark's credit was likely trashed if he was gambling like this. I was just a credit score to them. A host body for a parasite. My phone buzzed on the table. It was Jessica. Jessica, hey sis. Mark said you didn't come home last night? Is everything okay? Mom is worried. The audacity. The sheer, unadulterated evil of texting me with fake concern while wearing the jewelry my husband bought with my stolen retirement money. I typed back, my fingers flying. Hey Jess. Yeah, the storm was brutal. I slept in the on-call room at the hospital. Didn't want to risk the drive. Heading home in a few hours. Keep it normal. Keep them calm. Don't let the rabbit know the wolf is watching. I needed a lawyer. Not just any lawyer. I needed a shark. And I knew exactly who to call. Brenda wasn't just the staffing coordinator, that was a different Brenda. I was thinking of Brenda Lewis, my college roommate. We had started pre-med together. I dropped out to nurse school to support Mark. Brenda went on to law school. Last I heard, she was a partner at a firm in downtown Chicago that specialized in high-conflict divorces. I dialed her number. It rang twice. Sarah? Her voice was sharp, professional, but warm. I haven't heard from you in ages. Everything okay? No, Brenda, I said, my voice steady for the first time in 24 hours. I need your help. I need to divorce Mark, but first, I need to destroy him. There was a pause on the other end. Then, I heard the sound of a chair shifting and a door closing. Start from the beginning, she said. And don't leave anything out. An hour later, Brenda walked into the coffee shop. She looked like $1,000,000, tailored suit, sharp bob cut, eyes that could assess a contract or a human soul in 3 seconds flat. I looked down at my scrubs, which I was still wearing from yesterday, and felt a pang of envy. That could have been me. If I hadn't chosen Mark over my own potential. She sat down, ordered a double espresso, and listened. I played her the recording from last night. When Mark's voice said, touching her feels like charity work, Brenda's jaw tightened. When Jessica mentioned the inheritance, Brenda's eyes narrowed into slits. When the recording ended, she sat in silence for a long moment. Then she reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Her grip was iron. Okay, she said. Here is the situation. If you file for divorce today, he is going to claim he contributed to the appreciation of the house. He will fight for alimony. He will drag this out until you are bankrupt just to spite you. And that money he stole from the joint account? It's technically marital property. He was allowed to spend it, even if he spent it on strippers and crypto. So I can't do anything? I felt the despair creeping back in. I didn't say that, Brenda smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. It was a predator's smile. I said if you file today. But we aren't going to file today. We are going to set a trap. She pulled a notepad out of her Hermes bag. First, we need to secure your assets. The house is in your name, right? Yes. Inherited. Good. Inheritance is separate property unless you commingled it. Did you ever put his name on the deed? No. He asked, a lot. But my grandmother made me promise on her deathbed never to do it. It was the one promise I kept. Thank God for Grandma, Brenda muttered, jotting something down. Okay, so the house is safe until you sign that loan. If you sign a HELOC, home equity line of credit, with him, you are effectively gifting him half the equity. Do not sign that loan. I won't, I said. No, Brenda corrected me. You won't sign the real loan. But you need to make him think you are going to. We need him to feel secure. We need him arrogant. When men like Mark feel safe, they make mistakes. She leaned in closer. You mentioned he wants $250K for his business? And he's desperate? Yes. They want to run away to Miami. Here is the plan. You are going to go home. You are going to play the tired, devoted, slightly stupid wife. You are going to agree to the loan. You are going to tell him you want to support his dreams. I felt nauseous. I don't know if I can look at him without vomiting. You're a nurse, Sarah. You deal with vomit every day. Swallow it. Because here is the kicker, you are going to tell him that the bank requires a specific document to process the loan quickly because of his bad credit score. You are going to make him sign a post-nuptial agreement. He'll never sign a postnup, I argued. He knows that cuts him off. Not if we frame it right, Brenda said, her eyes gleaming. We create a document that looks like a financial disclosure statement for the bank, acknowledging the debt is for his business. Buried in the legalese, we include a fidelity clause and a separate property acknowledgement. We make it sound like it protects him from your potential medical malpractice suits. He's a narcissist, Sarah. If you tell him it's to protect his precious future millions from your liabilities, he will sign it with a gold pen. I stared at her. It was brilliant. It was diabolical. And Jessica? I asked. What about her? We tackle one monster at a time, Brenda said. But for her, do you have access to her financials? If she's on a joint card with you? I think she is on a supplementary card Mark opened. I saw it on the credit report. Get the statements, Brenda ordered. Every latte, every hotel room, every flight. We build a timeline of the affair. In Illinois, adultery doesn't always affect asset division, but dissipation of assets does. If he spent marital money on a mistress, the court can order him to pay it back to you dollar for dollar from his share. His share will be zero after the postnup, I realized. Exactly, Brenda grinned. He leaves with his clothes and his debt. You keep the house, the pension, and your dignity. She tore the page off her notepad and handed it to me. It was a list of instructions. Go home. Act normal, find the physical evidence, loan papers, diaries, receipts, install cameras/audio recorders in common areas. Illinois is a two-party consent state for audio, but in your own home, regarding safety/crime, there are gray areas. We use it for leverage, not necessarily in court. Get him to sign the bank document, postnup. Can you do this? Brenda looked me in the eye. I thought about the Rolex in my bag. I thought about the old hag comment. I thought of Jessica laughing at me. I can, I said. When do we start? Now, Brenda said. Go home. Enter the lion's den. And Sarah? Don't blink. The drive home from the coffee shop was the longest 40 minutes of my life. The snow had stopped, leaving the world white and dangerously bright. As I drove, my mind drifted back, trying to pinpoint exactly when my sister became my enemy. It wasn't just one moment. It was a slow drip of poison over 30 years. Jessica was the miracle baby. Born 8 years after me, when my parents thought they couldn't have any more children. She was born with blonde curls and blue eyes, looking like a cherub. I looked like my father, dark hair, average features, sturdy. From day one, the narrative was set. Jessica was fragile, Sarah was strong. Jessica was special, Sarah was capable. I remembered when I was 22, fresh out of nursing school. I had saved up $2,000 to backpack through Europe, a graduation gift to myself. 2 weeks before my trip, Jessica, then 14, was caught shoplifting designer sunglasses. The fine and the lawyer fees to keep it off her juvenile record came to exactly $2,000. My parents didn't have the cash. They looked at me. Sarah, my mom had said, tears in her eyes. It's her future. You can go to Europe anytime. You have a job. Please. I gave them the money. I stayed home. Jessica never said thank you. In fact, a week later, I saw her wearing the very sunglasses she had tried to steal. My parents had bought them for her to cheer her up after the trauma of the arrest. That was the pattern. I cleaned up the mess, Jessica got the reward. But the worst was when I met Mark. Mark was charming back then. He was a pharmaceutical sales rep who flirted with all the nurses, but he chose me. I felt chosen for the first time in my life. I was glowing. Jessica was 20 at the time, a college dropout trying to become an Instagram model before that was even a real career. When I brought Mark home for Thanksgiving, I saw the way she looked at him. It wasn't love. It was hunger. She looked at him like she looked at my clothes, my makeup, my achievements, like something she deserved simply because she existed. She would accidentally walk out in her towel when he was over. She would ask him to help her zip up her dresses. She's just a kid, Sarah, Mark had laughed when I brought it up. She looks up to me. Don't be so jealous. It's unattractive. So I buried my gut instinct. I told myself I was being the wicked older sister. I let them be friends. I let them text. I let Mark mentor her on her business ideas. I realized now that Jessica didn't want Mark because he was a great catch. She wanted him because he was mine. If I had married a garbage man, she would have flirted with him too. Her self-worth was entirely dependent on her ability to take things from me. And Mark? He loved the attention. I challenged him. I asked him about his finances. I asked him to help with chores. Jessica just looked at him with wide, worshipping eyes and told him he was a genius. It was the perfect storm. A narcissist who needed constant supply and a sociopath who needed to win. I pulled into my neighborhood. The streets were plowed now. My house sat there, innocent and quiet. The Miata was gone. Jessica had left. Good. I parked the Camry. I took a deep breath, checking my reflection in the rearview mirror. I pinched my cheeks to give them color. I applied fresh lip balm. I practiced my smile. It felt tight, like a mask that didn't quite fit, but it would have to do. I wasn't Sarah the wife anymore. I was Sarah the undercover agent. I touched the hidden pocket in my purse where I had stashed 3 voice-activated recorders I bought at a spy shop on the way back from Brenda's. Showtime. I walked up the steps, unlocked the door, and stepped into the house that was built on lies. Honey? I called out, my voice pitching up into a cheerful, slightly weary register. I'm home. Silence. Then, heavy footsteps thudding down the stairs. Mark appeared at the top of the landing. He was wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt, his hair messy. He looked like he had just woken up. Or just finished something else. Sarah! He hurried down, putting on a performance of relief that deserved an Oscar. My God, I was so worried. You didn't answer my texts. He reached out to hug me. I forced myself not to recoil. I let him wrap his arms around me. I smelled him. The expensive cologne was gone, replaced by the scent of shower soap. He had scrubbed the evidence away. I'm so sorry, Mark, I said, burying my face in his chest so I wouldn't have to look at his eyes. The migraine was blinding. I just passed out in the on-call room. I didn't mean to ruin our anniversary. Shoo, it's okay, he stroked my hair. I'm just glad you're safe. I missed you. Liar, I thought. You missed my paycheck. I missed you too, I lied back. And Mark. I've been thinking about what you said. About the business expansion. I felt his body tense up. He pulled back, looking at me with sudden intensity. Yeah? I think you're right, I said softly. I've been holding you back. I want to sign the papers. I want us to be successful. A slow, greedy smile spread across his face. It was the smile of a wolf that just saw the gate to the sheep pen swing open. That's amazing, babe, he said. You won't regret this. No, Mark, I thought as I smiled back. I won't. But you certainly will. I'm going to go take a shower, I told Mark, pulling away from his embrace. I feel gross from the hospital. Sure, babe. Take your time. I'll order some pizza, he offered. Pizza. For our 20th anniversary delayed dinner. Generous. Sounds great. I walked upstairs, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I went into the master bedroom. The bed was made, suspiciously perfectly. Mark never made the bed. He had clearly stripped the sheets and remade it to hide whatever stains or scents Jessica had left behind. I went into the bathroom and turned on the shower, letting it run hot and loud. This was my cover. I didn't strip. Instead, I quietly opened the medicine cabinet. Nothing out of place. I checked the trash can under the sink. Empty. Too clean. I slipped out of the bathroom and tiptoed into the walk-in closet. Mark had a private drawer in his dresser that he kept locked. He claimed it was for sensitive client contracts. I used to respect his privacy. Today, I respected nothing. I knew he hid the key in the hollow spine of an old encyclopedia on the bookshelf in the hallway. I had seen him put it there years ago and never thought twice about it. I slipped into the hall, grabbed the key, and rushed back. I unlocked the drawer. Inside, there were no client contracts. There was a stack of overdue notices for credit cards I didn't know existed. Chase Sapphire. Amex Platinum. All maxed out. And there it was. A folder labeled House. I opened it. My breath hitched. It was the application for the Helic home equity line of credit. He had already filled it out. And there, on the bottom line, was my signature. Sarah Evans. It was a decent forgery, but the loop on the S was too wide. He had practiced, but not enough. He was planning to submit this without me even knowing if I refused. But he needed a notary. How was he planning to bypass that? I flipped the page. There was a sticky note attached to a business card for a mobile notary named Gary. The note read, Gary, $500 cash. No questions asked. So that was the plan. Fraud. Straight up felony fraud. I pulled out my phone and snapped photos of everything. The forgery, the credit card bills, the sticky note. My hands were trembling, but the images were clear. I was about to close the drawer when I saw a small, crumpled CVS receipt tucked in the back corner. I unfolded it. Prenatal vitamins. Pregnancy tests, 2-pack. Date, yesterday. The room spun. Once her inheritance hits your account, we can finally leave. It wasn't just about money. They were starting a family. Jessica was pregnant. My sister was carrying my husband's child. I sat back on my heels, feeling the air leave my lungs. We had tried for years to have a baby. 5 years of IVF. Thousands of dollars. Miscarriage after miscarriage. Mark had eventually said, maybe it's a sign, Sarah. Maybe we're just meant to be a power couple. He had told me it was okay. He had held me while I cried over the negative tests. And now, he had knocked up my sister. The sheer cruelty of it made me want to burn the house down with all of us inside. It felt like a physical blow to the gut. They aren't just stealing my money, they are replacing me. Jessica wasn't just taking my husband, she was taking the motherhood I was denied. Get it together, Sarah, the voice in my head snapped. Crying won't fix this. Ruining them will. I put everything back exactly as I found it. I locked the drawer. I returned the key to the hallway bookshelf. I went back into the bathroom, stripped off my scrubs, and stepped into the scalding water. I scrubbed my skin until it was red, trying to wash off the feeling of contamination. I needed to plant the recorders. I had 3 tiny devices, smaller than a USB drive. When I got out of the shower, wrapped in a robe, I went downstairs. Mark was in the kitchen, on the phone, ordering the pizza. Yeah, pepperoni and mushroom, he was saying. I slipped into the living room. I stuck one recorder under the cushion of his favorite recliner using double-sided tape. I moved to the kitchen. Mark's back was turned. I slid the second recorder on top of the kitchen cabinets, pushed back into the dust where he would never look. The third one I kept in my pocket. That one was for the bedroom. Pizza will be here in 30 minutes, Mark said, turning around. He smiled at me, but his eyes didn't crinkle. They were cold, dead shark's eyes. Feeling better? Much, I lied. I'm starving. So, he leaned against the counter, crossing his arms. About the loan papers. I can call the bank tomorrow and get the application started. Actually, I said, walking over to the fridge to get water. I have a better idea. Brenda, you know my friend the lawyer? She owes me a favor. She said she could expedite the process through her contacts at the bank. We could get the money in days, not weeks. Mark's eyes lit up. Really? Yes. But she said the bank is really strict right now about commingling funds for business loans. She said we need to draft a quick document clarifying that the loan is for your business entity, not personal use. It lowers the interest rate. A document? Mark frowned. Like what? Just a formality, I waved my hand dismissively. I asked her to draft it up. She's bringing it over tomorrow night. I thought we could have a little dinner. Celebrate the funding? Maybe invite my parents? And Jessica? Jessica? Mark hesitated. Why Jessica? Oh, you know how she is, I rolled my eyes playfully. She's been so down lately about her career. Seeing us succeed might inspire her. Plus, Mom and Dad would love it. Mark relaxed. He saw an audience for his victory lap. Okay. Let's do it. Tomorrow night. The start of our new life. He tried to kiss me. I turned my head at the last second so his lips landed on my cheek. New life, I echoed. I can't wait. The next day was a blur of calculated preparations. I went to work, but my mind was entirely on the evening ahead. I messaged Brenda constantly. She had the document ready, the post-nup disguised as an asset allocation affidavit. It was a masterpiece of legal camouflage. I left work early again, stopping at the grocery store. I bought steaks, expensive ribeyes, Mark's favorite. I bought a bottle of Cabernet that cost $80. I was investing in the kill. When I got home, the house was quiet. Mark was at the office, which I knew was a Starbucks where he played online poker. I started cooking. The smell of searing meat and rosemary filled the kitchen. It was the scent of domestic perfection. I set the dining table with the good china, the wedding china we hadn't used in 5 years. At 6 p.m., Mark arrived home. He whistled when he walked in. Wow, he said, loosening his tie. Smells amazing. You really went all out. It's a big night, I smiled, smoothing my dress. I was wearing a black dress that I knew made me look thinner. I had put on makeup, hiding the dark circles. Is Brenda coming? He asked, looking around. She'll be here at 7 o'clock with the papers, I said. But Jessica and Mom and Dad are coming at 6:30. Right on cue, the doorbell rang. It was Jessica. She stood there in a tight, emerald green dress that hugged her body. She looked radiant, I had to admit. The pregnancy hormones were giving her skin a glow that my expensive creams couldn't mimic. Hi, sis. She breezed past me, barely touching my shoulder. God, it smells greasy in here. Are you frying something? Steak, I said, closing the door. She walked straight to Mark, who was pouring wine. Hey, brother-in-law. She touched his arm, letting her hand linger just a second too long. Hey, Jess. You look healthy, Mark said, a secret code in his eyes. I feel great, she beamed, placing a hand subconsciously on her lower stomach. I watched them from the hallway. It was sickening. They were preening in front of me, thinking I was blind. Mom and Dad arrived 5 minutes later. Sarah! Mom exclaimed, handing me a store-bought fruit cake. You look tired, honey. Are you sleeping enough? I'm fine, Mom, I said, taking the cake. Jessica, look at you. Dad boomed, hugging my sister. You look like a movie star. When are you going to get a real agent? You're wasting your talent. Soon, Daddy, Jessica winked. I have a feeling big things are coming my way. We sat down to dinner. I played the role of the servant. I served the steaks. I poured the wine. I refilled the water glasses. So, Dad said, cutting into his meat. Mark tells us you're finally investing in his company, Sarah. It's about time. My knife screeched against the plate. I looked up. Excuse me? Well, Mom chimed in. Mark has such potential. It seems selfish of you to hoard that inheritance money while his dreams were stalling. We're glad you finally saw sense. Selfish. I had paid off their mortgage 3 years ago. I paid for Dad's knee surgery. I paid Jessica's rent for 6 months when she found herself. And I was selfish. I looked at Mark. He was smirking, swirling his wine. He had primed them. He had turned them against me before I even knew there was a war. Yes, I said, my voice steady. I realized I needed to support my husband. That's what a good wife does, right? Exactly, Jessica said, popping a piece of steak into her mouth. You're lucky to have him, Sarah. Most men wouldn't put up with, the long hours. The neglect. Neglect? I asked, raising an eyebrow. You're never home, Sarah, Jessica said innocently. Mark gets lonely. Under the table, I saw Mark's foot nudge Jessica's leg. A warning. Don't push it. Well, I said, taking a sip of water. I won't have to work so many shifts once Mark's company takes off. In fact, I was thinking, maybe we can try for a baby again. With the extra money. The silence at the table was instantaneous. Mark choked on his wine. Jessica stopped chewing. A baby? Jessica repeated, her voice tight. But, aren't you too old? I mean, with your history. Doctors can do miracles these days, I lied. And wouldn't it be wonderful? A little heir? I saw Jessica's knuckles turn white as she gripped her fork. She was furious. She wanted to scream, "It's my baby." But she couldn't. That's great, honey, Mark stammered, wiping his mouth. But let's focus on the business first. One step at a time. The doorbell rang. That must be Brenda, I said, standing up. With the papers. I walked to the door, feeling the adrenaline surging through my veins. The trap was set. The bait was taken. Now, it was time to snap the jaw shut. Brenda walked in, bringing a blast of cold air and an aura of absolute authority. She wasn't wearing her usual sharp suit, she was dressed in casual chic, expensive jeans and a blazer, to look less threatening, less like a lawyer and more like a helpful friend. But I saw the briefcase in her hand. It looked like a weapon. Sorry I'm late, Brenda said, flashing a dazzling smile at the room. Hi Mr. and Mrs. Miller. Jessica. Mark. Brenda, Mark stood up, wiping his hands on a napkin. He looked nervous. Lawyers made him nervous. Good to see you. Thanks for helping us out with the logistics. Happy to help, Brenda said smoothly. She placed the briefcase on the cleared end of the dining table. Sarah tells me you're ready to secure the funding for Evans Tech. Exciting times. Very exciting, my dad said, leaning back in his chair. Finally, someone in this family is going to make it big. He shot a look at me, implying that my job as a head nurse was somehow small. Brenda caught the look. She didn't react, but I saw muscle in her jaw twitch. Right, Brenda said. So, I have the asset allocation affidavit here. As Sarah explained, this basically tells the bank that the $250,000 equity line is allocated specifically for commercial use. It creates a firewall between Mark's business liabilities and the personal home asset. It actually improves the approval odds by 40%. It was gibberish. Fancy, corporate-sounding gibberish. But Mark nodded like he understood every word. Makes sense, Mark said. Protects the house. Exactly, Brenda slid a thick document across the table. I've flagged the signature pages. Mark, you sign as the principal beneficiary. Sarah, you sign as the guarantor. Mark reached for the pen. Wait, Jessica interrupted. She was looking at the document suspiciously. Does this mean Sarah still owns the money? Brenda turned her gaze on Jessica. It was like a laser beam. It means, Brenda said slowly, that the bank acknowledges Sarah owns the collateral, the house. Mark owns the debt and the investment. It keeps the accounts clean. Unless you have a legal objection, Jessica? Are you an investor? No, Jessica shrank back, pouting. I just want to make sure Mark is protected. This protects him from audits, Brenda lied flawlessly. Mark, just here, and here. Mark didn't read it. He saw the number $250,000 at the top of the page, and his greed blinded him. He signed his name with a flourish. Scratch, scratch, scratch. That was the sound of the trap snapping shut. The document he just signed wasn't an affidavit for the bank. It was a binding post-nuptial agreement. By signing it, he admitted that the house was 100% Sarah's separate property. He admitted that any future debts incurred, like the loan he planned to take, were his sole responsibility. And buried in Clause 14b was the fidelity stipulation: if either party is found to have committed adultery, they forfeit all claims to marital assets and waive all rights to spousal support. He signed his own death warrant, and he smiled while doing it. Done, Mark said, capping the pen. So, when does the money hit? I'll file this first thing in the morning, Brenda said, slipping the document back into her briefcase. You should be clear to apply for the loan by Friday. Let's make a toast. Mom clapped her hands. To Mark. And to Sarah, for finally stepping up. I raised my glass. To the truth, I said. And getting what we deserve. Mark clinked his glass against mine. To us, babe. After dinner, Brenda excused herself, shooting me a subtle wink. The parents and Jessica moved to the living room for coffee. I was in the kitchen, loading the dishwasher, when my mother came in. She closed the door behind her. Sarah, she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. I need to talk to you. What is it, Mom? It's about Jessica. I braced myself. What about her? She's in a bit of trouble, Mom sighed. She owes some money on her car. And her rent is overdue. She didn't want to ask you, but you're asking, I finished the sentence. Mark is going to have all this investment money soon, Mom said. Once that loan comes through, maybe you could slip Jessica $5,000? Just to get her back on her feet? Mark doesn't even have to know. I stared at my mother. My husband was stealing my inheritance to run away with my sister, who was pregnant with his child, and my mother was asking me to secretly give that sister more of my money. The level of dysfunction was so deep it was drowning me. Mom, I said, my voice shaking with suppressed rage. Jessica is 38 years old. She's sensitive. Mom snapped. Not everyone is as hard as you, Sarah. You've always been cold. Jessica feels things deeply. She needs help. I am not cold, I said, slamming the dishwasher shut. I am exhausted. And no. I am not giving Jessica a dime. You are selfish, Mom hissed. I don't know where we went wrong with you. If you don't help your sister, don't expect us to come around for Christmas. Maybe I won't, I said. Mom stormed out. I stood in the kitchen, gripping the countertop. My own mother threatened to cut me off because I wouldn't enable her golden child. Good, I thought. Cut me off. It saves me the trouble of cutting you off. I walked into the living room. Mark was sitting on the sofa, his arms stretched out along the back, fingertips brushing Jessica's shoulder. They were laughing at something on his phone. They looked like a couple. And I was the intruder in my own home. Hey, Mark looked up. Your dad was just saying we should throw a big launch party. For the company. Invite everyone. Next Saturday? A party? I asked. Yeah. Celebrate the funding, Jessica chimed in. I can help plan it. We can do it right here. A party. A room full of witnesses. A stage. A slow, dark idea formed in my mind. Brenda had the legal paperwork. I had the recordings. I had the photos of the fraud. That's a great idea, I said, smiling a smile that didn't reach my eyes. Let's throw a party. Next Saturday. I'll invite everyone. Mark grinned. He thought it was his coronation. He didn't know it was his execution. The morning sun hit the snow-covered streets of Chicago with a blinding glare, creating a deceptive sense of purity. Inside my car, however, the air felt heavy, suffocating. I had told Mark I was going in for an administrative meeting at the hospital, but my GPS was set for downtown, to the high-rise office of Brenda Lewis and Associates. Driving there, my hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. Every stoplight felt like an eternity. My mind was a chaotic slideshow of the last 20 years. Was any of it real? The time I nursed him through the flu? The time we danced in the kitchen to Sinatra? Or was he always just calculating, waiting for the moment he could cash out? When I arrived at Brenda's office, the atmosphere was starkly different from my chaotic home. It smelled of expensive leather, old books, and cold justice. Brenda didn't greet me with a hug this time. She stood by the window overlooking the lake, her silhouette sharp against the glass. Sit down, Sarah, she said, not turning around immediately. Her voice had a gravity to it that made my stomach drop. The private investigator sent the courier over an hour ago. On her mahogany desk sat a thick, manila envelope. It looked innocuous, just paper and ink, but I knew inside lay the autopsy of my marriage. I sat in the leather chair, my legs feeling like lead. Show me, I whispered. Brenda turned, her face grim. She sat opposite me and slid the envelope across the desk. He was thorough. Sarah, you need to breathe through this. It's going to hurt. I opened the clasp. The first few photos spilled out. They were standard at first. Mark's car parked at Jessica's apartment complex at 11 a.m. on a Tuesday. Mark and Jessica walking into a boutique hotel in the Loop. I stared at his hand, the hand I had held for 2 decades, resting possessively on the small of her back. He was leaning in, whispering something into her ear, and she was laughing, her head thrown back in that performative way she always did. They look happy, I said, the word tasting like ash in my mouth. They look guilty, Brenda corrected. Keep looking. The next set was from a medical clinic. The Gold Coast Fertility and Obstetrics Center. My breath hitched. There was a photo of them leaving the building. Jessica was holding a glossy strip of paper, a sonogram. Mark had his arm wrapped around her shoulders, beaming with a pride I had never seen him direct at me. We verified the appointment, Brenda said softly, tapping a piece of paper. Jessica is 14 weeks along. Mark is listed as the partner and emergency contact. He paid the copay with the cash he withdrew from your joint ATM account last week. 14 weeks. I did the mental math. 3 months ago. While I was picking up extra graveyard shifts to pay for his dental surgery because he claimed he was in pain, he was actually in bed with my sister, creating a new life. He wasn't at the dentist. He was replacing me. There's more, Brenda said. Her tone warned me that the worst was yet to come. She pulled out a zoomed-in photograph taken through the window of a coffee shop. The lighting was clear. Jessica was sipping a latte, her coat open. Glinting at her throat, resting against her skin, was a gold teardrop locket with a small, deep blue sapphire in the center. The world stopped. The air left the room. That's... I couldn't finish the sentence. Is it? Brenda asked. Grandma's, I choked out, tears finally spilling over. That's my grandmother's locket. The one she wore every single day for 50 years. The one she promised me. I closed my eyes, a memory flashing violently in my mind. The day my grandmother died in our guest room. I was so distraught, handling the hospice nurses, calling the funeral home. Later, when I went to collect her personal effects, the locket was gone from her nightstand. I had torn the house apart. I had cried for weeks. Mark had held me, stroked my hair, and told me, "Honey, maybe one of the agency nurses took it. People are awful. Let it go." He had stolen it. He had stolen it from a dying woman's bedside table while her body was still warm. And he had saved it, like a trophy, a sick prize, to give to his mistress. To my sister. It wasn't just adultery. It was a violation of the sacred. It was grave robbing. He stole it from a dead woman, I hissed, my voice unrecognizable to my own ears. A deep, primal rage began to boil in my chest, burning away the sadness. He gave my inheritance to the woman who is helping him steal my money. It's possession of stolen property, Brenda said, her pen scratching rapidly on a legal pad. And it proves malice. But Sarah, look at the last document. This is the nail in the coffin. It was a printout of an email chain. The PI had keylogged Mark's laptop password. From markevansceo@yahoo.com to miamioceanrealty@gmail.com. Subject, urgent, deposit incoming. I'm transferring the $250,000 next week. My wife is signing the equity release this Friday. I want the unit on South Beach, the penthouse with the ocean view. Make sure it's ready for move-in by the 1st. My partner and I are leaving Chicago permanently. No forwarding address. Leaving permanently. He wasn't just stealing the money to invest. He was abandoning me. He planned to drain the equity from my grandmother's house, leave me with $250,000 in debt, a foreclosure notice, and a broken heart, while he vanished into the sunset with Jessica. I looked up at Brenda. My tears had stopped. The sorrow was gone, replaced by a cold, hard clarity. He thinks the money is coming Friday, I said. And it won't, Brenda replied, a shark-like grin spreading across her face. Because I filed the postnup this morning. The bank isn't going to process a loan request from a man who just legally signed away his rights to the collateral. But he doesn't know that yet. I need to keep him blind until Saturday, I said, standing up. The party. Can you do it? Brenda asked, looking me dead in the eye. Can you go back to that house, sleep in that bed, and look at him knowing what he did? I picked up the photo of the locket. I stared at the sapphire eye. I can, I said. Because I don't just want to divorce him, Brenda. I want to destroy him. Returning home that evening felt like walking onto a movie set where I was the only actor who knew the genre had changed from a romance to a horror. The house smelled of lemon polish and deceit. Mark was in the living room, surrounded by sketches and catering menus. He was manic, buzzing with an energy that I now recognized as greed. He looked up when I entered, his eyes bright but empty. Sarah! You're back! He rushed over to kiss my cheek. I had to force every muscle in my body not to recoil. Look at this, I'm thinking we do a champagne tower right here in the foyer. Classy, right? For the investors. Very classy, I said, setting my purse down. How much will that cost? Don't worry about the cost, babe. He laughed, waving a hand dismissively. We're going to be rich by Monday. I put the deposit on the credit card. The Amex. My Amex. The one I paid off every month with my nursing salary. He was spending my money to celebrate stealing the rest of my money. Right, I said, forcing a smile. About that loan. Brenda called me. Mark froze. The smile dropped instantly. What? Is there a problem? I walked into the kitchen to get a glass of water, making him follow me. I needed him to feel like he was chasing the information. Not a problem, exactly. But she said the bank is doing a manual review because the amount is so large. $250,000 triggers some red flags. Manual review? Mark's voice pitched up. Sweat beaded on his upper lip. How long does that take? Usually 48 hours, I said calmly, taking a sip. She said since we signed that asset affidavit, the document you signed Tuesday, it should clear. But the funds might not hit the account until Monday morning. Monday? Mark slammed his hand on the counter. I have vendors waiting. I have deadlines. He meant the Miami condo. He meant the plane tickets. He was terrified the window was closing. It's just 2 days, Mark, I soothed him, reaching out to touch his arm. His skin felt clammy. Why are you so stressed? The money is approved. You're safe. He looked at me, searching my face for any sign of deception. I kept my expression open, concerned, loving. The perfect wife. I'm just anxious, he exhaled, running a hand through his thinning hair. I want to give you this life, Sarah. I want us to be free. Liar. We will be, I said. Why don't you focus on the party? If the money comes Monday, the party on Saturday is even more important. It's your victory lap. You need to keep the investors happy. That distracted him. His ego was his Achilles heel. You're right, he nodded, puffing out his chest. The party has to be perfect. I'll call the florist. We need more lilies. For the next 2 days, I lived in a state of high-wire tension. Every time Mark picked up his phone, I wondered if the bank had called him. Every time Jessica texted him, I wondered if they were getting suspicious. Jessica came over on Thursday night to help with the decorations. I was in the kitchen chopping vegetables when she breezed in. She wasn't wearing the locket, she was smart enough to hide it when she knew I was looking, but she was wearing a silk scarf I had bought for myself last year and then lost. Hi, sis, she said, grabbing a carrot stick from the cutting board. Mark is stressing out. You really should be more supportive. I'm doing my best, I said, the knife thudding rhythmically against the board. Chop. 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 I'm baking the cake myself. A cake? Jessica smirked. A bit homemade for a tech launch, isn't it? Mark wants high-end. It's a special recipe, I said, looking at her. Red velvet. It's bloody delicious. Jessica wrinkled her nose. Gross. Anyway, I moved your nursing diplomas out of the living room. They didn't fit the vibe. We want people to think success, not bedpans. I tightened my grip on the knife. You moved my things? Just to the closet, she shrugged. Don't be so sensitive. Once Mark's company takes off, you won't need those silly certificates anyway. You can retire. Maybe lose some weight. She patted her own flat stomach, which I knew was hiding my husband's child. You know, Jessica, I said softly. You're right. Big changes are coming. Glad you finally see it, she said, bored. I'm going to go help Mark with the playlist. He needs someone with taste. She walked out. I stood there, shaking. The urge to scream, to stab the knife into the counter, to burn the house down was overwhelming. Later that night, Mark told me he was sleeping in the guest room again. I have early calls with developers in Tokyo, he lied. Okay, I said. I waited until 2 a.m. I crept down the hallway. I could hear his voice through the thin door of the guest room. He wasn't talking to Tokyo. Don't worry, baby, he was whispering. Monday morning. The wire clears, we transfer it to the offshore, and we're on the noon flight. She won't know a thing until she tries to buy groceries and the card declines. I stood in the dark hallway, a ghost in my own home, recording every word on my phone. She won't know a thing. He thought I was the victim. He didn't realize that in a horror movie, the quiet ones are the ones who survive. And the ones who talk too much? They're the first to go. Saturday morning dawned gray and heavy, the sky threatening another storm. It matched the roiling feeling in my gut perfectly. Today was the day. The day I burned my life to the ground to save myself from the ashes. The house was a hive of activity. Mark had hired a cleaning crew and a catering team, all put on credit cards that were about to bounce. He was running around in his bathrobe, barking orders like a general. No, no. The red carpet goes all the way to the curb, he shouted at a confused teenager from the rental company. It needs to look majestic. I retreated to the kitchen. This was my bunker. I had told Mark I needed absolute privacy to finish the showstopper cake. Make it big, Sarah, he had told me, checking his reflection in the toaster. Make it scream money. It will scream, I promised. I mixed the batter. Flour, sugar, cocoa, buttermilk. And a copious amount of red food coloring. As I stirred the crimson mixture, it looked visceral, like oxygenated blood. I poured it into the pans. While the cake baked, filling the house with a deceptive scent of warmth and sweetness, I went to execute the technical part of my plan. Mark's laptop was set up on the AV table in the living room, connected to the massive 70-inch screen he had rented. He was terrified of me touching it. Don't mess with the tech, Sarah, he had warned. It's calibrated. I waited until he went upstairs to shower. I knew I had exactly 15 minutes. I walked over to the laptop. My hands were shaking, but my resolve was steel. I plugged in the USB drive Brenda had given me. The file name was identical, evanstech_launch_final_v2.pptx. I dragged Mark's original file, the one full of lies and stolen graphs, into the recycling bin, and then permanently deleted it. I dragged my file onto the desktop in its place. My file started exactly the same. The first 3 slides were his generic vision and synergy garbage. I wanted him to feel safe. I wanted him to start his speech, to get into his rhythm, to feel the arrogance swelling in his chest. And then, slide 4. That's where the bomb was hidden. I pulled the USB drive out and slipped it into my pocket. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. Done. I went back to the kitchen just as Mark came bounding down the stairs, smelling of my expensive exfoliant. Smells good in here, he chirped. Is the cake ready? Just frosting it, I called out. I covered the cake in pristine, snow-white fondant. It looked innocent. Pure. On top, I placed a single decoration I had made from sugar paste, a black rose. At 5 p.m., I went upstairs to dress. For 20 years, Mark had dictated my wardrobe. Wear the beige, it's classy. Don't wear red, it's too aggressive. Cover your arms. Tonight, I opened the back of my closet and pulled out the dress I had bought 5 years ago and never worn. It was crimson. deep, blood-red silk. It was fitted, tailored, and sharp. It made me look like a weapon. I put it on. I pulled my hair back into a severe, elegant chignon. I put on my grandmother's diamond earrings, the ones I had managed to hide in my jewelry box safe. I looked in the mirror. The tired nurse with the dark circles was gone. In her place was a woman who was done being a doormat. My phone buzzed. It was Brenda. Brenda, we are en route. Police escort is parked 2 blocks away, unmarked car. Detective Miller is ready. Signal is the text message slide. I took a deep breath. Showtime. I walked downstairs. Mark was in the foyer, adjusting his tuxedo. He looked up, and his jaw actually dropped. Sarah, he blinked. You're wearing red. It's a celebration, Mark, I said, my voice smooth and cool. Red is for victory. Isn't that what we're doing tonight? Winning? Yeah, he stammered, unsettled by the shift in my energy. You look different. I feel different. The sound of a car engine cut him off. We looked out the window. Jessica's red Mazda pulled up. She stepped out. And my breath hissed between my teeth. She was wearing white. A white, lace cocktail dress. It looked disturbingly like a short wedding dress. She was carrying a bouquet of white lilies. She was playing the bride at my own funeral. I watched her walk up the path, preening for imaginary paparazzi. As she adjusted her coat, I saw the glint. The locket. She was wearing it. Under her scarf, but visible if you looked closely. She was wearing my dead grandmother's necklace to my house, in front of my face. A cold calm washed over me. Any last shred of hesitation, any tiny flicker of mercy I might have held for my sister, evaporated instantly. I opened the front door. Welcome, Jessica, I said, stepping aside. You look appropriate. Thanks, she breezed past me, barely making eye contact. Where's Mark? We need to go over the script. He's in the living room, I said, closing the door behind her. Waiting for his co-star. The doorbell rang again. The guests were arriving. I stood in the foyer, the red dress swishing around my legs, and smiled. It was the smile of the executioner before the blade drops. By 7:30 p.m., the house was packed, and the air was thick with cheap cologne and expensive delusion. Mark had invited a bizarre mix of people. On one side of the room, clustered around the rented champagne fountain, were the investors. These weren't venture capitalists. They were loan sharks, gambling buddies, and shady businessmen from the darker corners of Chicago's financial district. Men in ill-fitting suits who looked at my furniture like they were calculating its resale value. On the other side stood my cavalry. Brenda looked magnificent in a sharp black power suit, holding a glass of sparkling water like a scepter. Beside her stood Dr. Evans, the chief of surgery, and 3 other senior nurses from my trauma unit. Mark thought I had invited them to show off his success. In reality, I had invited them because they were the most credible witnesses in the city. If Dr. Evans said something happened, a judge would believe him over 1,000 marks. And then, there was my family. My parents, Linda and Robert, were holding court on the plush sofa. They looked ecstatic. Dad was puffing on a cigar he wasn't supposed to smoke inside, telling anyone who would listen, my son-in-law is a visionary. Always knew it. Mom was fussing over Jessica. Jessica was perched on the arm of the sofa, basking in the attention. Her white dress was tight, showing the slight, deliberate curve of her baby bump. She kept placing a hand protectively over it, smiling secretly at Mark across the room. I stood by the kitchen island, a glass of water in my hand, watching the circus. Sarah, Brenda slid up beside me. The room is primed. Detective Miller is listening via the wire on my lapel. He's just waiting for the fraud to be confirmed publicly. It won't be long, I whispered, keeping my eyes on Mark. Mark was in his element. He was laughing too loud, gesturing too wildly. He was high on adrenaline and the certainty that he had gotten away with it. Look at him, Brenda murmured. He thinks he's the king of Chicago. He's the king of fools, I said. Just then, my mother waved me over. I walked toward them, my red dress commanding attention. Sarah! Mom exclaimed, looking me up and down with a critical eye. That dress, isn't it a bit much? You don't want to upstage Mark. Tonight is his night. I think I look powerful, Mom, I said calmly. You look aggressive, she sniffed. Look at Jessica. She looks so angelic in white. So soft. Soft, I repeated. I looked at Jessica. She smiled at me, a smug, pitying smile. Great party, sis, Jessica said. Although, the champagne tastes a bit cheap. Did you budget this? We spared no expense, I said, my eyes drifting to her neck. She had loosened her scarf in the heat of the room. The gold chain was visible. Nice necklace, Jessica. Is it new? Jessica's hand flew to her throat, covering the locket. Oh, this? Just something vintage I found at a thrift store. A thrift store, I repeated. Amazing what people throw away, isn't it? Things that used to be precious. Yeah, well, she looked away, uncomfortable. One man's trash, right? Right. Suddenly, the music cut out. Mark tapped a spoon against a glass. Cling, cling, cling. Everyone! If I could have your attention. Mark bellowed, his face flushed with excitement. Please, gather around the screen. I have a short presentation about the future of Evans Tech. The room quieted. The guests shuffled toward the massive 70-inch screen Mark had set up like an altar. Mark stood next to it, holding the remote control like a weapon. He looked at me. For a second, his eyes softened, or maybe it was just the alcohol. First, he said, I want to thank my wife, Sarah. Applause. I stood stone still. Sarah has been the bedrock, Mark continued. She held down the fort so I could build the castle. But tonight, we are moving out of the fort and into the palace. Cheers from the loan sharks. Jessica clapped louder than anyone, beaming at him. Tonight, I am proud to announce that Evans Tech has secured full funding for our global expansion. Mark shouted. We are launching in 3 markets next month. And to explain our vision, I prepared this. He pointed the remote at the laptop. My heart hammered against my ribs. Here we go. He clicked. The screen lit up. Slide 1, Evans Tech, the future is now. Mark smiled. He clicked again. Slide 2, Global Synergy. A stock photo of a handshake. Our mission, Mark recited, his confidence soaring, is to leverage connectivity to create wealth. He clicked again. Slide 3, Revenue Projections. A graph pointing up. As you can see, our growth is exponential, Mark bragged. And the most important asset of any company is transparency. He looked at the crowd, feeling the power. And that brings me to our key partners. He clicked for slide 4. I held my breath. The screen flickered black for a second. Technical glitch, Mark laughed nervously. Just a second. He clicked again. The image appeared. Massive. High definition. Undeniable. It wasn't a list of partners. It was a screenshot of a text message conversation. The contact name at the top was clear, Jessica, my muse. The text read, Mark, God, she's so pathetic. I hate going home to her. She smells like antiseptic and desperation. Jessica, just hold on, baby. Once she signs the loan on Friday, we take the cash and run. Miami is waiting. Mark, I can't wait to never see her ugly face again. The silence that fell over the room wasn't just quiet. It was violent. It sucked the air out of the lungs of everyone present. Mark froze. He stared at the screen, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. What? He whispered. What is this? He clicked the remote frantically. Click. Click. The slide didn't go back. It went forward. Slide 5. A photo. Mark and Jessica at the bistro. His hand on her leg. Her head on his shoulder. And on the table between them, my grandmother's locket. My mother gasped. It was a sound of pure horror. Mark turned slowly to look at me. His face was pale, stripped of all arrogance. I stepped forward from the shadows, my red dress blazing like a warning flare. Transparency, Mark, I said, my voice cutting through the silence. You wanted transparency? Here it is. The silence stretched, thin and brittle, until it snapped. Turn it off! Jessica shrieked. Her voice was high and jagged, shattering the stillness. Mark, turn it off! Someone hacked us. Mark fumbled with the remote, his thumbs mashing the buttons in a panic. I can't. It's frozen. Sarah, help me. Someone hacked the laptop. Nobody hacked the laptop, Mark, I said, walking slowly toward the center of the room. I felt calm. Terrifyingly calm. I uploaded the file. I edited the presentation. You? Mark looked at me, betrayal written all over his face. The irony was almost funny. You, why would you? To show your investors what they're really investing in, I said. The slideshow advanced on its own timer now. I had set it for maximum impact. Slide 6. A bank transfer authorization form. Recipient, Cayman Islands Holdings Shell Corp. Amount, $250,000, pending. Memo, Miami Exit Fund. A murmur went through the crowd. The loan sharks in the cheap suits stepped forward, their faces hardening. They didn't care about the affair. But they cared about the money. Hey, one of them shouted, a thick-necked man named Tony. You told me that money was for servers. You told me I'd get a 20% return next month. You're skipping town? No. No. Mark waved his hands, sweating profusely. Tony, listen, that's a fake document. She photoshopped it. I'm expanding the business. He's not expanding anything, I said, looking Tony in the eye. He was planning to mortgage this house, my house, take the cash, and run away with his mistress. He was going to leave me with the debt and you with nothing. Tony looked at Mark. Is that true, Evans? No. Mark screamed. The slide changed again. Slide 7. The ultrasound. Black and white. Grainy. But the text in the corner was sharp and clear. Patient, Jessica Miller. Partner, Mark Evans. Gestational age, 14 weeks. This time, the reaction didn't come from the loan sharks. It came from the sofa. My father stood up. He moved slowly, like an old man trying to stand under a heavy weight. His face was a mask of confusion and horror. He looked at the screen, then at Jessica, then at Mark. Jessica? Dad whispered. His voice was trembling. Is that real? Jessica burst into tears. Ugly, heaving sobs. She wrapped her arms around her belly. Daddy, please. I can explain. It just happened. We fell in love. Love? I laughed. The sound echoed off the high ceilings. You call sleeping with your sister's husband while she works double shifts to pay your rent love? He loves me. Jessica screamed, turning on me, her face twisted and red. He hates you. Look at you. You're old. You're boring. You couldn't even give him a child. I gave him a son. The cruelty of her words hung in the air. The doctors and nurses behind me gasped. Brenda stepped forward, her face furious, but I held up a hand. I didn't need protection. Not anymore. You're right, Jessica, I said softly. I couldn't give him a child. But I gave him a home. I gave him a life. I gave him 20 years of loyalty. I turned to Mark. He was backed against the TV, looking trapped. And you, I said. You stole my retirement. You stole from our joint account. $60,000 on gambling. DraftKings? Really, Mark? I was going to win it back. Mark yelled. I had a system. I did it for us. For us? I pointed at the screen where the text message "I can't wait to never see her ugly face again" was still visible. Does that look like us? That was just talk. Mark pleaded, switching tactics to begging. Sarah, baby, listen. I was stressed. She seduced me. Jessica threw herself at me. I'm a man, Sarah. I'm weak. She made me do it. You coward. Jessica shrieked. She lunged at him, hitting his chest with her fists. You told me you loved me. You told me she was a hag. You promised we were going to Miami. They were tearing each other apart. The rats were eating each other on the sinking ship. Enough! I shouted. The room fell silent again. I don't care about your love affair, I said. I care about what you took. I walked straight up to Jessica. She was panting, mascara running down her face. Take it off, I said. What? She blinked, confused. The scarf, I said. Take it off. Now. No, she clutched the silk at her throat. Leave me alone. Take it off, Jessica, my mother's voice rang out. We all turned. Mom was standing up now, her face pale as a sheet. Take off the scarf. Trembling, Jessica unknotted the scarf and let it fall to the floor. There it was. The gold teardrop locket. The sapphire caught the light of the chandelier. Oh my God, Dad choked out. That's your grandmother's. He stole it, I told my parents, staring at them. Mark stole it from Grandma's nightstand while she was dying in our guest room. He stole it, and he gave it to her. I didn't know. Jessica sobbed. He told me he bought it. He said it was an heirloom for our new family. It is an heirloom, I said. Mine. I reached out. Jessica flinched, but she didn't stop me. I unclasped the necklace from her neck. It felt heavy and warm. I wiped it on my dress, wiping away her sweat, her betrayal, and put it in my pocket. Now, I said, turning back to Mark. About that loan you're waiting for. Mark looked at me, desperation in his eyes. Sarah, please. The money. If the money comes Monday, I can pay Tony back. I can pay everyone. We can fix this. The money isn't coming, Mark, I said, a smile touching my lips. What? The document you signed on Tuesday? I asked. The asset affidavit? Yeah. For the bank? It wasn't for the bank, I said. It was a post-nuptial agreement. By signing it, you legally admitted that the house is 100% my separate property. You admitted that all future debts are yours alone. And Clause 14b states that in the event of infidelity, you forfeit all claims to marital assets. Mark's knees actually buckled. He grabbed the TV stand for support. You tricked me, he whispered. I outplayed you, I corrected. You are homeless. You are broke. And you are done. The realization hit Mark like a physical blow. The color drained from his face, leaving him a sickly shade of gray. You set me up, he snarled, pushing himself off the TV stand. His shock was morphing into aggression. You be asterisk. You planned this whole thing. You tricked me into signing that. I protected myself. I shot back. Something I should have done 20 years ago. It won't hold up in court. Mark screamed, stepping toward me with his fists clenched. I'll say I was under duress. I'll say you forged it. Actually, Brenda's voice cut through the air, cool and sharp as a scalpel. She stepped forward, holding her phone up. You signed it willingly. We have the notary's video log. And we have you on tape saying, quote, this protects the house, right? You understood exactly what you were signing. Mark looked at Brenda, then at the loan sharks, then at me. He was cornered. A cornered animal is dangerous. He looked at the laptop. The evidence. I'll destroy it, he muttered. He grabbed the laptop and smashed it onto the floor. Plastic shattered. There. No proof. It's in the cloud, Mark, I said, shaking my head. And on 3 USB drives. And in Brenda's safe. Why are you doing this to me? He wailed, tears of frustration streaming down his face. I just wanted to be someone. I just wanted you to respect me. I respected you when you were a salesman, I said quietly. I respected you when you were broke. I lost respect for you when you became a thief. And you. Mark turned on Jessica. This is your fault. You and your expensive tastes. I need the penthouse, Mark. I need the first-class tickets. Don't blame me. Jessica shouted back. You promised me you were rich. You lied to me too. You're both pathetic, I said. Suddenly, Mark's eyes darted to the door. He was calculating the distance. He was going to run. I'm leaving, he announced. Try to stop me. I wouldn't do that, Brenda said calmly. She tapped her ear. Now. The front door burst open. The room flooded with red and blue light from the street outside. 2 uniformed officers and a man in a trench coat walked in. The guests gasped and scattered, pressing themselves against the walls. Mark Evans, the man in the trench coat asked. Mark froze. Who are you? Detective Miller, Financial Crimes Division, the man said, flashing a badge. We have a warrant for your arrest. Arrest? Mark squeaked. For what? Being a bad husband isn't a crime. No, Detective Miller said, walking closer. But wire fraud is. Identity theft is. Forgery is. I didn't. We have the HELIC application you forged, the detective interrupted. We have the sticky note offering a bribe to the notary. And we have the logs of you accessing your wife's retirement accounts unauthorized. Mark looked at me. Sarah? You called the cops? I reported a crime, I said. The officer grabbed Mark's wrist. Click. The handcuffs locked into place. Mark struggled. Sarah! Tell them. Tell them it's a misunderstanding. I'm your husband. Not anymore, I said. As they dragged Mark toward the door, he looked back at Jessica. Jess. Call a lawyer. Get me out. Jessica didn't move. She was trembling, holding onto the sofa. Ms. Miller? The detective turned his attention to my sister. Jessica flinched. I didn't do anything. I'm just the girlfriend. We have you on conspiracy to commit fraud, the detective said. We have the texts where you discuss the timeline of the theft and possession of stolen property. The necklace? Jessica whispered. I gave it back. She has it. Theft is theft, the detective signaled the second officer. No! Jessica screamed as the officer approached her. I'm pregnant. You can't arrest a pregnant woman. You'll be processed at the station, the officer said, taking her arm gently but firmly. Mom! Dad! Jessica looked at our parents. Do something. Help me. My father looked at her. He looked at the daughter he had spoiled, the golden child he had protected from every consequence her entire life. He looked at her belly, carrying the child of his other daughter's husband. He turned his head away. Mom! Jessica wailed. Mom covered her mouth and sobbed, leaning into Dad. They didn't move. They marched Jessica out. She passed me, her eyes filled with hate. I hate you, Sarah. You ruined everything. I didn't ruin anything, Jessica, I said calmly. I just turned on the lights. The door closed. The sirens wailed. The room was silent. The loan sharks had vanished out the back door the moment the cops arrived. The catering staff stood awkwardly in the corner. I walked over to the table where the red velvet cake sat untouched. I picked up the knife. Well, I said to the stunned room. The guests of honor are gone. But there's still cake. I cut a slice. The inside was a deep, vibrant red against the white fondant. I put it on a plate. Who wants the first piece? The police cars had faded into the night, but the energy in the house was still vibrating, electric and sharp. My colleagues, Dr. Evans and the nurses, came up to me one by one, hugging me, whispering words of support. You're the bravest woman I know, Dr. Evans said. If you need anything, Sarah. Anything at all. Thank you, doctor, I said. I just need to sleep for about a week. Brenda stayed. My parents stayed. We sat in the living room, the debris of the party around us. Half-empty champagne glasses, the uncut cake, the shattered laptop on the floor. My parents sat on the sofa where Jessica had been perched just an hour ago. They looked shrunken. Defeated. Sarah, Dad said finally. His voice was raspy. We need to talk. I'm tired, Dad, I said, sitting in the armchair across from them. Can this wait? No, Mom said, wiping her eyes. It's about Jessica. She called from the station. She used her one call to call us. Of course she did. She's in a holding cell, Dad said. She's terrified. She's saying the bail is going to be set high because of the flight risk thing. Mark had the tickets. And? I asked. And, we don't have the cash, Dad admitted. Our money is tied up in the annuity. We can't access it without a penalty. I looked at them. I knew where this was going, but I couldn't believe they had the audacity to say the words. Sarah, Mom leaned forward. You have the savings. The money you moved from the joint account before Mark could get it. If you could just help us post bail. For the baby. Please. She can't be in jail pregnant. I stared at them. After everything they had just seen. After the texts calling me a hag. After the stolen necklace. After the plot to leave me homeless. They were asking me to use my money, the money I saved from being stolen, to bail out the thief. Something inside me didn't just break, it incinerated. You want me to bail her out? I asked quietly. She's your sister, Mom pleaded. She made a mistake. She was manipulated by Mark. She wasn't manipulated, I said. She was a partner. Did you not see the texts? Can't wait to take the cash and run. That was her. She's family, Dad said weakly. No, I stood up. I am family. She is a predator. And you are her enablers. I walked over to the sound system. My phone was still plugged in. You think you've heard it all, I said. But there's one recording I didn't play for the guests. Because it was too personal. Because it wasn't about the money. It was about you. Sarah, don't, Mom begged. I need you to hear this, I said. I turned to the few remaining people in the room, and then I looked straight ahead, as if addressing a camera, breaking the fourth wall of my own life. I looked straight at the guests, and now I'm looking at you. Before I press play on this final recording, the one that destroyed the last shred of guilt I had, I need to know you're with me. If you're still listening, if you believe that betrayal should have consequences, please hit the like button and comment the number 1 below. Let me know that I'm not crazy for standing up for myself. Let me know you're on my side. Comment 1 right now so I can see you. Now, listen to this. I pressed play. The audio filled the room. It was from a month ago. Jessica and Mark in my kitchen. Jessica's voice, what if Mom and Dad find out? Mark's voice, they won't care. They love you. They think Sarah is a bore. Jessica's voice, laughing, true. Mom told me yesterday that Sarah looks like a dried-up spinster. She said, at least Jessica has spark. They'll forgive us. Once we have the money, we'll buy them a nice car and they'll forget Sarah ever existed. Mark, exactly. Sarah is just the ATM. You're the daughter they actually want. I stopped the recording. The silence was deafening. Mom was clutching her chest, her mouth open in a silent scream. Dad looked like he had been punched in the gut. She said that? Mom whispered. About us? About buying us? And you said that about me, I added. Dried up spinster. ATM. I never meant. Mom stammered. Get out, I said. Sarah. Get out. I screamed, the sound tearing from the bottom of my lungs. It was 30 years of repressed anger finally erupting. Get out of my house. Go to the police station. Go bail her out if you can find the money. But get out of my life. Brenda stepped forward, opening the front door. You heard her, Brenda said coldly. Leave. My father stood up. He looked old and broken. He took my mother's arm. She was sobbing uncontrollably now. Come on, Linda, Dad said. We've lost the right to be here. They walked out into the night. I slammed the door behind them. I locked it. I threw the deadbolt. I slid down the door until I hit the floor. And finally, for the first time in weeks, I cried. Not for Mark. Not for Jessica. But for the little girl I used to be, the one who tried so hard to be good enough, and finally realized she never would be. And that she didn't need to be. The days following the arrest were a strange mix of chaos and silence. The chaos was legal, the silence was personal. Mark was denied bail. The judge looked at the one-way tickets to Miami, the offshore account setup, and the recording of him saying we leave no forwarding address, and declared him a significant flight risk. He was remanded to Cook County Jail to await trial. My lawyer, Brenda, told me he called her office every day, begging for a deal, begging to speak to me. I blocked the calls. Jessica's situation was different. My parents, true to form, liquidated their retirement annuity, taking a massive tax penalty to post her bail. She was released on house arrest, forced to wear an ankle monitor and live in my parents' guest room. I heard through the grapevine, my cousin Clara, the only relative who took my side, that the atmosphere in my parents' house was poisonous. Jessica was no longer the golden child. She was the mistake that cost them their golden years. She was pregnant, unemployed, facing a felony charge, and trapped with two elderly parents who resented her. It sounded like hell. It sounded like justice. One afternoon, 2 weeks after the party, I was packing up the kitchen. I had decided to sell the house. Too many ghosts. The doorbell rang. I checked the camera. It was my father. He was alone. He was holding a white envelope. I debated not opening the door. But curiosity, or perhaps a desire for closure, made me turn the lock. "Sarah," he said through the screen door. He looked frail. He had lost weight. "Dad. I just wanted to drop this off." He held up the envelope. "What is it?" "It's a check," he said. "For $2,000. Plus interest." I froze. $2,000. The exact amount I had paid to keep Jessica out of jail when she was a teenager. The money that stopped me from going to Europe. "Why?" I asked, opening the door a crack. "I can't undo the past," he said, staring at his shoes. "I can't undo that we favored her. We were blind. We thought she needed protection because she was weak. And we thought you didn't need anything because you were strong." "I needed parents," I said quietly. "I know," his voice cracked. "I know that now. Listening to that recording, hearing her laugh about buying us off, it broke your mother. She hasn't left her room in days." He pushed the envelope through the crack. "Take it. Please. It's the only thing I can do." I took the envelope. It felt light, but heavy with meaning. "How is she?" I asked. "Jessica?" "She's miserable," Dad said grimly. "She cries all day. She blames Mark. She blames us. She blames you. She takes no responsibility. And for the first time, I see it. I see what we created." "I'm sorry, Dad," I said. And I meant it. I was sorry for him. "You're selling the house?" he asked, looking at the boxes in the hallway. "Yes." "Where will you go?" "Away," I said. "Somewhere warm. Somewhere without snow." He nodded. "You deserve it. You always did." He turned to leave. He walked down the steps, his shoulders slumped. "Dad," I called out. He stopped, turning back with a flicker of hope. "Keep the money," I said. "Sarah, no. Keep it," I insisted. "Use it for the baby. That little boy is innocent. He's going to need clothes. He's going to need protection. Don't let him turn into her." Dad looked at me, tears streaming down his weathered cheeks. He nodded once, unable to speak, and walked to his car. I closed the door. I looked at the envelope in my hand. I hadn't given it back. I lied. I wanted to keep it. Not for the money, I had plenty now, but as a trophy. A receipt for my freedom. I walked back to the kitchen. I picked up a roll of packing tape. Write-up. I sealed the box labeled Mark's stuffed trash. I was done cleaning up their messes. 6 months later. The federal courthouse in downtown Chicago is a cold, imposing building. The air conditioning is always set too low, as if to freeze the crime out of the criminals. I sat in the gallery, next to Brenda. I wore a cream-colored suit. I looked serene. Mark was brought in. He looked terrible. The jail jumpsuit hung off his frame. His hair, once his pride and joy, was thinning and unkempt. He looked 10 years older. When he saw me, his eyes lit up with a desperate sort of recognition, as if I might jump up and save him at the last minute. I didn't smile. I didn't frown. I just watched. The plea deal had been negotiated. "Mr. Evans," the judge said, peering over his glasses. "You are pleading guilty to 1 count of wire fraud and 1 count of aggravated identity theft?" "Yes, Your Honor," Mark's voice was a whisper. "The plea agreement stipulates a sentence of 36 months in federal prison, followed by 3 years of supervised release. You are also ordered to pay restitution." 3 years. It didn't seem like enough for stealing a life, but it was enough to ruin his. He would be a felon forever. He would never trade stocks, never work in finance, never pretend to be a CEO again. As they led him away, he turned to look at me one last time. He mouthed one word, "Sorry." I looked right through him, focusing on the exit sign behind his head. Sorry is a word you use when you bump into someone. Not when you try to bankrupt them. Jessica's trial had happened a week prior. Because she cooperated with the prosecution against Mark, turning over emails and texts, and because she was a new mother, she got probation. 5 years. And a massive fine. She was working as a waitress at a diner near my parents' house to pay it off. My cousin told me Jessica hated it. She had to wear a uniform. She had to serve people. It was the humblest she had ever been forced to be. The baby, Chance, was living with my parents mostly. Jessica wasn't much of a mother. But my Dad was trying. He was trying to do it right this time. I walked out of the courthouse into the blinding sunshine. "Well," Brenda said, putting on her sunglasses. "It's done. You are officially divorced. He is officially an inmate. And you are officially rich." "I don't feel rich," I said, taking a deep breath. "I feel light." "Light is good," Brenda smiled. "So, is the moving truck loaded?" "It left this morning," I said. I had sold the house. The bidding war was insane. I walked away with nearly $1 million in equity. Mark's investment strategy had been right about one thing: the house was a gold mine. But he didn't get a dime of it. "I can't believe you're moving to Florida," Brenda shook her head. "The irony is palpable." "It's not irony, Brenda," I said. "It's reclamation." Mark wanted Miami to hide. He wanted to sit on a beach and do nothing. I'm going there to work. I'm going to build something real. "The bakery?" "The bakery," I nodded. "I signed the lease yesterday. It's a little place in Sarasota. Near the water. It needs work, but it has good bones." "Just like you," Brenda squeezed my hand. We walked to my car. It was packed with the last few essentials. My clothes. My grandmother's jewelry box. And the locket hanging around my neck. "You'll come visit?" I asked. "Try and stop me," Brenda said. "I need a vacation from all these criminals." I hugged her. A real, bone-crushing hug. She had saved my life. I got into the car. I turned the key. The engine purred. I drove out of the city. I watched the skyline of Chicago fade in my rearview mirror, the Sears Tower, the lake, the hospital where I had worked for 20 years. I was leaving it all behind. The snow. The double shifts. The betrayal. I turned on the radio. Tom Petty was singing "I Won't Back Down." I turned it up. I hit the highway, heading south. Toward the sun. Toward the ocean. Toward Sarah. 1 year later. The bell above the door chimed, a cheerful ding-ding that never failed to make me smile. Morning, Sarah. It was Mrs. Gable, one of my regulars. She was 70, tanned like old leather, and had a sharp wit. Morning, Elsie, I called out from behind the glass display case. I have your sticky bun warm and ready. You're an angel, she sighed, leaning on the counter. And I see you made the red velvet today. I looked at the cake stand. The deep crimson cake, frosted with stark white cream cheese icing, sat proudly in the center. It's a bestseller, I smiled. My bakery, the Sapphire Crumb, was small, but it was mine. The walls were painted a soft teal. The air smelled of vanilla, yeast, and sea salt. Through the front window, I could see the Gulf of Mexico, shimmering turquoise under the Florida sun. My hands were covered in flour. My apron was stained with chocolate. My feet were tired, but it was a good tired. It wasn't the soul-crushing exhaustion of the hospital. It was the fatigue of creation. I had built this. No loans from husbands. No help from parents. Just me, my savings, and my grandmother's recipes. I wiped the counter. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Brenda. Brenda, guess who called me collect? Mark. He's up for parole next year. He wants to know if you'd write a character reference letter. I laughed out loud. The audacity was almost impressive. I typed back, tell him I'm busy. The yeast is rising. I put the phone away. I didn't hate him anymore. I didn't feel much of anything for him. He was just a character in a book I had finished reading. As for my family, I sent cards. Christmas. Birthdays. I sent a toy truck for Chance's first birthday. Dad sent me photos. The kid looked sweet. He looked like Mark, which was unfortunate, but he had my dad's eyes. I hadn't visited. Maybe one day. But not yet. My peace was too new, too fragile to risk. The bell rang again. A man walked in. I hadn't seen him before. He was tall, wearing a linen shirt and holding a leash attached to a golden retriever. He had salt and pepper hair and a kind face that crinkled around the eyes. Sorry, he said, pointing to the dog. Is he allowed? It's too hot to leave him outside. Buster? I asked. The man blinked. How did you know his name? I'm psychic, I joked. No, the tag on his collar is huge. He laughed. It was a warm rumble of a laugh. Right. I'm David. And yes, this is Buster. We heard rumors about a cheesecake. Rumors traverse the beach fast, I said. I'm Sarah. Sarah, he repeated. He looked at me. Not at my chest, not at the register, but at my face. I like the name of the place. Sapphire Crumb. Is there a story? I touched the locket at my throat. The sapphire was warm against my skin. It's a long story, I said. About lost things being found. I have time, David said. And Buster is very patient for cheese. I cut a slice of cheesecake. I looked at this man, this stranger with kind eyes. A year ago, I thought my life was over. I thought being 46, divorced, and childless was a death sentence. I thought I was an old hag. But standing here, with the sun on my face and flour on my hands, I realized something. I wasn't old. I was ripe. I wasn't empty. I was free. Coffee is on the house, I said. If you tell me your story first. David smiled. Deal. I leaned against the counter, listening to the ocean crash outside, listening to a stranger become a friend. I thought about the red velvet cake. It was born from anger. I had baked it to mock my husband's destruction. But now? Now I baked it because people loved it. I had taken my pain and turned it into something sweet. Something that nourished people. I took a deep breath. I was Sarah. I was a nurse. I was a baker. I was a survivor. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't funding someone else's dream. I was living my own. And so, Sarah's journey reminds us of a profound truth: self-worth is not something others grant us, it's something we claim for ourselves. Her story is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, showing us that even in the face of betrayal, loss, and heartbreak, we have the power to rebuild, to redefine, and to rise again. Sometimes, walking away from what no longer serves us is the greatest act of courage and self-love. Through Sarah, we see the importance of setting boundaries, valuing our own dreams, and refusing to let others diminish our light. Life will test us, but it's in those darkest moments that we discover our strength, our clarity, and our ability to transform pain into purpose. Her choice to reclaim her life wasn't just about justice, it was about freedom, about finding peace, and about creating a future she could truly call her own. What about you? Have you ever faced a moment where you had to stand up for yourself, even when it was hard? Share your thoughts below, or simply comment good if Sarah's story inspired you to value yourself a little more today.